Hi, my name is Karen, and I'm an American lay student of Ajahn Suchat, or Pra Ajahn Suchat Abhijato, who has given me the very special honor of being asked by him to record this book for you. This book was written by Pra Ajahn Suchat's own teacher, the Venerable Acariya Mun Nanasampanno, and is a spiritual biography written by him about his teacher, the Venerable Acariya Mun Biography. The title of the book is Venerable Acariya Mun Biography, a spiritual biography by Acariya Mun Nanasampanno, and it was published in 2005, translated into English by Bhikkhu Dick Silaratano. If you would like to learn how to download or get a hard copy of this book, or a list of which pages or chapters are read on each separate recording, please listen to the beginning of the first recording of this book. This book, in any form, is to be given away for free. Any ads you may see or hear in this recording have been put there by the platform you are using to listen or view with, for its own revenue, in exchange for letting us use their platform for free. Please forgive me for any mispronunciations of names, places, or words, as I'm still learning how to pronounce Thai and Pali, and for any background noises, as I'm just making these recordings in my apartment with an unruly dog and in the middle of a city. We're continuing today on page 142. We are in the last section of the second chapter titled An Impeccable Human Being. Acariya Mun departed from Ban Nong Kong with his mother at the beginning of the dry season. They stayed 1 or 2 nights at each village until they arrived at his home village, where Acariya Mun resided for a time. He instructed his mother and the villagers until they all felt reassured. Then he took leave of his family to go wandering in the direction of the Central Plains region. He traveled leisurely in the style of a Dhutanga monk. He was in no particular hurry. If he came upon a village or a place with an adequate supply of water, he hung up his umbrella tent and peacefully practiced, continuing his journey only when he regained strength of body and mind. Back then, everyone traveled by foot, since there were no cars. Still, he said that he wasn't pressed for time, that his main purpose was the practice of meditation. Wandering all day on foot was the same as walking meditation for the same duration of time. Leaving his disciples behind to walk alone to Bangkok was like a lead elephant withdrawing from its herd to search alone for food in the forest. He experienced a sense of physical and mental relief, as though he had removed a vexatious thorn from his chest that had severely oppressed him for a long time. Light in body and light in heart, he walked through broad sectioned paddy fields absorbed in meditation. There was very little shade, but he paid no attention to the sun's searing heat. The environment truly seemed to make the long journey easier for him. On his shoulders he carried his bowl and umbrella tent, the personal requisites of a Dhutanga monk. Although they appeared cumbersome, he didn't feel them to be burdensome in any way. In truth, he felt as though he were floating on air, having relieved himself of all concern about the monks he left behind. His sense of detachment was complete. His mother was no longer a concern for him, for he had taught her to the best of his ability until she developed a reliable inner stability. From then on, he was responsible for himself alone. He walked on as he pondered over these thoughts, reminding himself not to be heedless. He walked meditation in this manner along paths free of human traffic. By midday, the sun was extremely hot, so he would look for a pleasant shady tree at the edge of a forest to rest for a while. He would sit there peacefully doing his meditation practice under the shade of a tree. When late afternoon came and the heat had relented somewhat, he moved on with the composure of one who realized the dangers inherent within all conditioned things, thus cultivating a clear, comprehending mind. All he needed were small villages with just enough houses to support his daily alms round, and at intervals along his journey, suitable places for him to conveniently stay to practice that were far enough from the villages. He resided in one of the more suitable places for quite some time before moving along. Acariya Mun said that upon reaching Dong Paya Yen Forest between the Saraburi and Nakhon Ratchasima provinces, he discovered many forested mountain ranges that brought special joy to his heart. He felt inclined to extend his stay in the area in order to strengthen his heart, for it had long been thirsting to live again in the solitude of the mountains and forests. Upon coming across a suitable location, he would decide to remain a while and practice meditation until the time came to move on again. Steadily, he wandered through the area in this way. He would tell of the region's forests and mountains abounding in many different kinds of animals, and of his delight in watching the barking deer, wild pigs, sambor deer, flying lemurs, gibbons, tigers, elephants, monkeys, languars, civets, jungle fowl, pheasants, bear, porcupine, tree shrews, ground squirrels, and the many other small species of animals. The animals showed little fear of him when he crossed paths with them during the day when they were out searching for food. Those days, the forested terrain didn't really contain any villages. What few there were consisted of isolated settlements of 3 or 4 houses bunched together for livelihood. The inhabitants hunted the many wild animals and planted rice and other crops along the edge of the mountains where Acariya Mun passed. Villagers there had great faith in Dhanga monks, and so he could depend on them for alms food. When he stayed among them, his practice went very smoothly. They never bothered him or wasted his time. They kept to themselves and worked on their own, so his journey progressed trouble-free, both physically and mentally, until he arrived safely in Bangkok. And we're now going to begin Chapter 3, which is titled A Heart Released, on page 145. Venerable Acariya Mun said that he often traveled back and forth from the northeast to Bangkok, sometimes taking the train to the end of the line, which extended only part of the distance in those days. All other times he walked to Tonga. Upon arriving in Bangkok on this trip, he went to Wat Pa Baan Monastery and stayed there through the rains retreat. During the rains, he frequently studied Dhamma texts with the Venerable Chow Kun Upali Gunu Pamacharya at his monastery, Wat Boromaniwat. Chow Kun Upali invited Acariya Mun to accompany him to Chiang Mai after the rains. So during the dry season, they went to Chiang Mai by train. On the train, Acariya Mun remained in samadhi almost the whole time. Between Bangkok and Lopburi, he laid down to rest. But after the train departed Lopburi and reached the foothills of Uttaradit, he entered samadhi and remained there for the duration of the trip to Chiang Mai. At the start of his meditation, he made a decision to withdraw from it only upon arrival at Chiang Mai, and then focused exclusively on his meditation. After approximately 20 minutes, his citta completely converged into the very base of samadhi. From that moment on, he was no longer aware of whether the train was moving or not. Absolute stillness was all that his heart knew. All awareness of external phenomena, including his body, completely ceased. Any perception that might have disturbed it vanished from the citta as though the world no longer existed, having disappeared along with all thoughts and inner sensations. The noise of the train, the other passengers, and all the things that were associated with the citta earlier were extinguished from his awareness. All that remained was his state of samadhi. The external environment faded out of consciousness from the moment his citta first converged until he arrived in Chiang Mai, where his previous determination restored him to his normal state of consciousness. When he opened his eyes to look around, he saw the surrounding buildings and houses of the city. As he began collecting his things in preparation for leaving the train, he noticed that the passengers and railway officials around him were staring at him in astonishment. When it was time to disembark, the railway officials approached him and, smiling cheerfully, helped him with his things, while everyone else in the passenger carriage stared curiously at him. Even before he had stepped off the train, he was asked what monastery he was from and where he was going. He replied that he was a forest-dwelling monk without a fixed residence, and that he intended to go wandering alone in the remote mountains of the north. Inspired by faith in him, some of them asked where he would stay and whether anyone had agreed to take him there. He thanked them, replying that there was someone to receive him, since his traveling companion was Chao Kun Upali, a very senior monk, and one who was highly respected by all in Chiang Mai, from the governor to the merchants and the general public. So it happened that a crowd of monks, novices, and lay supporters awaited to receive Chao Kun Upali. There were even automobiles in waiting, which were quite rare in those days. Official government cars, as well as private ones, were there to escort them to Wat Chedi Luang Monastery. Once people learned that Chao Kun Upali had returned to reside at Wat Chedi Luang, they came to pay their respects and hear him expound the Dhamma. Chao Kun Upali took advantage of the many people present to invite Acariya Mun to give a discourse on Dhamma. Speaking eloquently, Acariya Mun enthralled the large audience so much that they wished it would not end. Starting from the basics, he gradually climbed step by step to the higher levels of Dhamma, where he ended his discourse to the sincere regret of all who were absorbed in his presentation. He then paid his respects to Chao Kun Upali before he left center stage to find a place to relax by himself. Meanwhile, Chao Kun Upali praised his talk before the whole assembly by saying, Acariya Mun expounds Dhamma so eloquently that it is difficult to find anyone to equal him. He clarifies Mutudaya, the heart released, the land of absolute freedom, in a way that leaves no room for doubt. Everything is so precisely illustrated that I myself couldn't possibly match his unique, engrossing style. The rhetorical fluency of this Dhutanga monk is most extraordinary. Listening to him is a pleasurable learning experience. His discourses never become stale or boring. He speaks of common, everyday things, things we see and hear all the time, but never pay attention to utilize. We recall their significance only after he mentions them. Acariya Mun is an important Kammatthana monk who uses mindfulness and wisdom to faithfully follow the path taught by the Buddha. He never tramples upon it in an unseemly, worldly manner. His talks employ a full range of expression, sometimes casual, sometimes serious, sometimes emphatic, stressing specific points. He elaborates the profound complexity of Dhamma in a way the rest of us are hard-pressed to do so candidly. He is quite capable of analyzing the disparate aspects of Dhamma and articulates them in a way that deeply affects our hearts. His commentary is so brilliant that it's hard to keep up with him. I myself have needed to ask him questions about problems I couldn't solve on my own, and he quickly and adeptly solved those problems with his wisdom. I have benefited in innumerable ways from his counsel. Since I was coming to Chiang Mai, I wanted Acariya Mun to accompany me, and he readily agreed. Although he did not specifically mention this to me, he probably agreed to come here because he knows Chiang Mai abounds in mountains and forests suitable for the spiritual life. Monks like Acariya Mun are extremely hard to find. Even though I am his senior, I wholly revere the Dhamma within him. And yet, he is still so humble and gracious towards me that I sometimes feel embarrassed. He has intended to stay here for only a short while before going off in search of seclusion. I must allow my friend to follow his inclinations, as I dare not contradict them, for it is rare indeed to find such a monk. With his intentions being solely focused on Dhamma, we should wish him the best as he strives to improve himself. He can then be of greater benefit to us all in the near future. Those of you who have problems with your meditation practice, please go to him and seek his advice. You certainly won't be disappointed. But please don't ask him for powerful amulets, magic spells, or lucky charms to ward off danger, for they are all outside the way of practice. You will just make yourself a nuisance to him for no good reason. You may well receive a reprimand. Don't say I never warned you. Acariya Mun is not that kind of monk. He is a genuine monk, sincerely teaching people to know the difference between right and wrong, good and bad, virtue and evil. His teaching never deviates from the path of Dhamma. His way of practice and knowledge of Dhamma are true to the teachings of the Lord Buddha. No one else nowadays can convey such incredible ideas as he has presented me from our discussions on Dhamma. That has been my experience. I hold an immense respect for him in my heart, but I have never told him this. Nevertheless, he may already know of it from his powers of intuition. Acariya Mun is a monk truly worthy of the highest respect, and is unquestionably an incomparable field of merit for the world. He himself never makes claims of noble attainments, though they are apparent to me when we discuss Dhamma in private. I am wholly convinced that he is firmly established in the third level of the noble Dhamma. It is obvious from the way he expresses himself. Although he has never made statements of his specific level of attainment, I know for certain what it is. For the knowledge of Dhamma he has conveyed to me is absolutely consistent with that level as described in the Buddhist texts. He has shown me nothing but loyalty and respect, and I have never known him to be in any way stubborn or disdainful. He conducts himself with such humility that I cannot help but admire him from the bottom of my heart. These were the words of praise that Chow Kun Upali addressed to the lay followers, monks, and novices after Acariya Mun gave his Dhamma talk and returned to his hut. Afterwards, monks who were present reported this speech to Acariya Mun, who later recounted the story to his disciples when a good opportunity arose. The term mutodaya means a heart released. Its mention in the short biographical sketch distributed at Acariya Mun's cremation stems from that occasion in Chiang Mai when Chow Kun Upali praised his noble virtues. The name stuck and was then passed down to future generations by word of mouth. According to Chow Kun Dhamma Chedi of Wat Bodhisampan Monastery in Udon, Thani, Acariya Mun remained practicing in Chiang Mai from 1929 to 1940, when he left for the province of Udon Thani. More will be written later concerning his stay in Udon Thani. And we're going to end there today. We are at the top of page 149. We'll continue on that page in the next recording. We are now in chapter 3. I'll see you next time with Metta. Bye-bye.